64mm jets are often overlooked because they are a bit smaller, but in my opinion, they are a great option if you want something small and compact enough to just throw in the car and go flying anytime you want. When I heard FMS was coming out with a brand new 64mm F-16, I had to get my hands on it. So today we are going to be unboxing and taking a look at the brand new 64mm F-16 Fighting Falcon from FMS. I'm Alex from Hangar 14. Let's get into it. So this is my first ever plane from FMS. Now, I've followed along with FMS for quite a while, seen what they've been doing throughout the last multiple years, but have never got my hands on one of their planes. So I'm really excited to dive in and really see what it's all about. Now, this F-16 here comes in two different versions. Version number one being their Battlefield Gray variant that they call it, which is more of a militarized version of the F-16, as you would probably expect with an actual fighter jet. It comes with a gray color scheme, it comes with a bunch of missiles, drop tanks, a bunch of other ordnance, and version number two being this one right here, which of course is the Thunderbirds version, which is the US Air Force's demo team. Now, growing up, going to a bunch of air shows when I was younger and seeing the Thunderbirds perform live, I thought it was only right to finally get my hands on something that is Thunderbirds related, and I think this does look really good. Now, this plane here is a plug and play airplane, which means that all you really need to get it going is a receiver to bind to a radio that you have. So today we're going to be putting in the Spectrum AR630, which does have AS3X and safe on it. We're not going to be using the safe, but I do really like, especially with some of the smaller airplanes like a 64mm, having that AS3X just to help in case there's any wind or anything like that. Bigger planes tend to handle wind a little bit better. The smaller ones, they get knocked around a little bit. So I wanted to go with the AS3X in there. Say what you will about gyros. I tend to like them. I've been flying for 20 plus years. I don't need a gyro, but I still like to have it sometimes. So inside of this plane, here's what you're going to find. You're going to find that it's powered by a 2840 3150 kV brushless motor with a 40 amp speed control, and that's all spinning a 64mm 12-bladed EDF fan. Now, this whole thing is powered off a 4S 2200 or 2600 LiPo battery pack, and that's going to get this thing moving through the air really good. Now, another thing you'll notice, especially when we go to fire this thing up, is that this thing is loaded with lights. There are a ton of lights throughout this airplane, which add a really nice touch, especially to a model that's a little bit on the smaller side. Now, one of the things that FMS has really said about this plane is that it has some really durable landing gear. And by looking at it, not only does it look really nice in scale with a bunch of details, I believe these are just plastic covers on just bent wire for the landing gear, but it adds a nice touch of detail, and you actually do get a working front strut with a little bit of suspension in there, and these do look really beefy and they should hold up pretty well, which I'm excited to see how it does on grass. Typically 64mm do struggle to get off of the grass a little bit, so we'll see how it does with a grass runway. Now, throughout the plane you'll find 6 9-gram plastic gear servos. Now, they are digital servos, but they are just plastic gear servos. Nothing too crazy about them, but they get the job done. I mean, planes in this size, you don't really need anything too aggressive. We do just have normal elevators here. We don't have full flying stabilizers or anything like that. So it's not going to be going through anything too crazy that's going to require a metal gear servo. I know a lot of people, like, they get really kind of upset when planes don't have metal gear servos. Obviously, they want the best of the best. But I mean, we're looking at a $200 RC jet. You're not going to get a bunch of crazy stuff with it. I mean, already we are getting quite a bit outside of that, so you can get away with plastic gear servos. It's gonna be just fine. These do the job perfectly fine. Now, with everything laid out here, we don't have too many parts to install. Looks like we just got to put our wings on. Looks like we do have to glue our rear horizontal stabilizers on, as well as our vertical stabilizers, so there is a little bit of gluing involved. That is what it is. I know a lot of people don't like to mess with glue that much anymore, especially since you can kind of get away with bolting things in quite a bit now. But there is a little bit of hardware, it looks like, for our wing mounting and then our landing gear. So a little bit of hardware here as well, and a little bit of gluing. Nothing too terrible. Looks pretty straightforward. I don't imagine this to take very long at all, but those are some famous last words. So without further ado, let's go ahead and start getting this thing together. So first things first, we're gonna go ahead and attach our wings. Now this is a fairly straightforward process. Slide our wing tube through the fuselage, connect our 2 wires for our aileron and our lights. Now the way this harness is set up, it doesn't matter which ones plug into which. They are not labeled on the plane side. Just make sure they are aligned and snapped in completely. Next, slide the wing on all the way and attach it using 2 of the supplied screws. Tighten these down, but not too tight. Remember, we're dealing with foam and plastic here. No need to crank these things down. Same thing on the other side, connect the wires, slide it all the way on, and screw it down. Next, we move on to the back of the plane, and this is where we need to start using our glue to attach our horizontal stabilizers. Lay a good bead of this glue down, make sure to keep the servo wire out of the way so it doesn't get pinched in between here, and press in our horizontal stabilizer. If you are using a glue like I am, make sure you hold it in place for about a minute or so to make sure that it's set up properly and doesn't start to pull away. Repeat again on the other side, and I guess I didn't get this part on camera, but once everything is dry, plug in your servo wires, and there's a little channel that you can tuck the wire and the connector down into, so make sure to do that as well. Moving on to the vertical stabilizer and our rudder, we have 2 more wires to connect, one for the servo and one for the light that's on the top of this. Now these ones do matter which plug you plug them into because they are labeled. Now before you go ahead and put your glue down, I would recommend doing a test fit first to make sure all your wires are where they should be and so they don't get pinched. If they do get pinched, it won't allow the stabilizer to seat properly and it could cause it to come loose or be crooked once the glue dries. Take some time with this, make sure it's aligned as straight as possible. Honestly, I do really wish this was kind of screwed together like the wings, but it is what it is. Moving back to the front of the plane, it's time to install our nose gear. Now this slides on nice and easy and it's simply locked into place by a set screw. Flipping the plane back over, we get to install our main landing gear. Now these pop in nicely and are secured by these plastic covers and 3 screws on each side. Again, make sure these things are snug but not over tight. Repeat the same on the other side, and the last thing we need to assemble are these fins right here. Now these have a nice rail mechanism that they're made of plastic so they slide in and lock in nicely, which I really like. No gluing or anything required here. So the plane is fully assembled. Overall, not too bad. Just a little bit of glue and a couple screws and we are good to go. So the last thing to do here is install our receiver, power everything up and make sure everything is going the right way, and we should pretty much be good to go. So again, we're going to be putting this AR630 in here. So I think where we're going to have to put this is actually back here in the mess of all this, but just looking at the size of this receiver and kind of the lengths of the wires here without running any sort of additional extension, back here seems to be the best solution. There seems to be enough room back here, so we should be good. So we're gonna go ahead and get this out of our packaging and just start to get everything kind of set up here. So elevator, we got rudder, there's our throttle. I think our throttles are really long in here. We also do have reverse thrust on this. So I've never actually experimented that much with reverse thrust, but I think we should be able to hook it up just fine here. We plug our throttle into 1. We figure out where the signal wire for this goes. I believe this just goes into, can go into the top of 6, but we'll go ahead and get everything else plugged in here first. So these should be our ailerons. We're gonna put that into number 2. Elevator should be number 3. Rudder is number 4. Now we also have this 3-spot harness for, looks like the lights, and as well as the steering servo for the front nose gear. We're just gonna kind of tuck that down in there. So this is gonna go into spot number 4. I believe the last thing is actually just number 5, which I believe we can just plug our reverse thrust into. So we're gonna go ahead and plug that into the top pin in spot number 5. That's what we're gonna have as our reverse thrust. And then we have a channel open, so we should be able to run our AS3X. So we're gonna go ahead and get this bound to our trusty old DX6 here. So we'll go ahead and get some of that. Holy crap, those are bright. My God. That looks so awesome. There's so many lights on this thing. All right, we're gonna go ahead and get our receiver into bind mode. Go ahead and bind this. Here we go. All right, so we are bound to our transmitter. It looks like we got ailerons on the right channel, elevator on the right channel, rudder on the right channel. Looks like the only thing that really needs to be reversed is our ailerons. Throttle, working as it should. We do need to figure out how to activate that reverse thrust though. So there it is. Found it. The switch. Nice. Now that we know everything's hooked up the right way, we can try to find the best spot for all of this. I chose to mount the receiver right behind the steering gear servo, shoving all the wires out of the way to make as much room as possible. I secured it to the bottom of the plane using a piece of 3M tape and stuck it down to hold it in place. I forgot, last little piece to install are these little rails on the ends of the wings here. Typically, you would put like your missile rails on there, but since this is a demo jet, we don't have those missiles. So these go on the ends here. I really like these parts that just slide in like that. It's a little rail system, works really, really well. The only thing left to do here is set up the AS3X in the forward programming. If you guys don't want to see that, go ahead and skip to this part of the video right here. Put a timestamp right there. But I do want to hook up the AS3X on here, so we're just going to do that real quick. That is done in the forward programming section of your Spectrum transmitter, if that's what you are running. Pretty straightforward. I'm going to go ahead and do that here quick. We're going to go into the forward programming menu, go into gyro settings, first time setup, and it's going to basically walk us through everything. This is going to sit level. We're actually going to take this off of our stand. We need to move this around a little bit. Make sure wing type, everything is good. Travel trim before continuing setup. Good to go. Make sure that it's level. Continue. Go ahead and do this. Now, we need to make sure that our orientation is set correctly here. So if we go ahead and take our canopy off, the way that this is looking, looks to be correct. Front of the plane's here, front of the receiver is here, good to go. If it's not, you have to go back, change the orientation on your screen, go through the process again, make sure that that's all good to go. Because essentially what that's telling it to do is, this is what the front is, this is what the back is, this is how it's sitting level, so it knows what to go off of. So everything looks to be good. And now we'll go ahead and set our gains. I don't know exactly what to set those on this right at the moment. I'm gonna probably set them pretty low. I also recommend anytime you do set up any sort of AS3X or safe on a plane that does not typically come with it, so anything like a plug and play airplane from like another company, outside of like Horizon and E-Flight and all that kind of stuff that you're putting this on, make sure to put it on some sort of flight mode switch so you can turn it off, especially if you are messing around with the different types of gains and settings and limitations and all that kind of stuff. So that way, if it does start going absolutely crazy in the air, you're not going to lose your airplane. You can just, by the flip of a switch, shut everything off, fly it like normal, and you should be good. So make sure to do that. We'll make sure to do that here. We'll assign it to a switch so we can set it to where we need to be and kind of experiment around, see what works best for this plane. And after our maiden flight and kind of experimenting it, I'll do a follow-up video on what exactly we did setup-wise for this plane. All right, so there we have it, our fully assembled FMS 64mm F-16 in the Thunderbird setup. I honestly think this plane looks absolutely fantastic. These lights are incredibly bright, especially this one on the tail here. It's like laser shooting my freaking eyes out right now. But it looks really, really good. I think it has a lot of great attention to detail, from the canopy to the landing gear to the lights, just to the actual model itself with everything molded into the foam. Some other auxiliary details kind of just throughout the rest of the plane. I think it looks really, really good. Assembly-wise, not too bad at all. It really didn't take too long, honestly. The longest part was probably just waiting for some of the glue to dry, but they do recommend using a foam-safe CA. We did not do that. We used a different type of foam glue that we have that takes a little bit longer to set up. But other than that, assembly, very, very straightforward. Everything seemed to fit really nicely together. Everything lined up the way that it should. Everything was nice and labeled and plugged in nice and neat where it was supposed to go. We didn't have to run like any crazy wires or anything. That was already done for us for like the tails. Overall, very simple assembly, and I cannot wait to get this thing in the air. And with that being said, it's going to wrap it up for this video. The maiden flight is going to be coming very, very soon. Actually, at the time of filming this, we are going out tomorrow with a couple friends, and we're actually going to be having like a maiden palooza Palooza with a bunch of different airplanes. So it's gonna be a really fun time. Make sure you stick around for that video. Make sure to subscribe. And of course, if you are at all interested in this FMS 64mm F-16, you can check out the link in the description. I also have a couple coupon codes for you to try out as well. Depending on what you're getting, you can use code Hanger14RC or $10 Hanger14RC. You can check them out down in the description. Save you some extra cash on your next purchase. So that's just a thank you for you guys checking out the videos and following along. So thank you all again so much. Make sure to subscribe. I'm Alex from Hanger14RC, and we'll see you later.